Good morning, all of you. Thank you for joining the webinar today. I am Arpan Makwana, and I'm heading the innovation practice for Evosys globally. I've got Anurag with me. He's helping me with this webinar today, and he is the regional manager for innovation practice as well. Um, so today we are going to talk about what are the solutions that really help automate a lot of business processes in the organization. And especially when we have a challenging situation at our hand right now, it is imperative to understand what solutions can we pick up, how can we prioritize them, and what impact can they have in the organization, and help us to automate as many processes as possible. So let me deep dive into the webinar. I'll quickly introduce ourselves. So, we implement almost all different applications that come from Oracle. We have implementation experience in finance, HR, similarly EPM, supply chain, BI. So we implement all these different types of solutions for all different verticals that are in the region. So we work with public sector organizations as well as with private sector organizations, especially when it comes to automation kind of solutions. And we are present in almost more than 30 odd countries, and that's where our global expertise comes into picture. So these are certain solutions that we implement for our customers. The first is digital assistants. So chatbots, how they can really help us to automate business processes or corporate interactions. So I'm going to briefly talk about chatbots today and RPA. So RPA is basically robotic process automation. It is a tool that helps us to automate most of the backend processes, whether it is from the HR side or it is from the finance side or supply chain. So we can identify what are the processes and how we can automate all of these. The other areas that we work on are IoT, Internet of Things, helping us to do preventive maintenance and of the assets, track the assets in real time, ensure the health and safety of the workers. Similarly, ensure the production monitoring, which gives us the best out of the production units that we've got. Similarly, on the other hand, we have artificial intelligence and machine learning kind of solutions for different verticals. Then we have analytic solutions and autonomous data warehouse, which help us to implement advanced analytic solutions like predictions and in terms of financials, in terms of operations. And then we've got lift and shift, so we can help organizations to move all their infrastructure workloads from on-premise to the cloud infrastructure kind of environments. So this is, in a nutshell, all that we do in terms of innovative technologies. So when you look at digital assistant or virtual assistant, as I mentioned that we have seen a lot of organizations spending a lot of time in serving their customers as well as their internal employees when it comes to giving them the information that they need for their day-to-day work. So we have developed certain skills or certain digital assistant capabilities that help you to interact with all your enterprise applications through a common chatbot window. Right from your ERP applications to HR applications to supply chain and to customer applications. So all these different applications can be accessed through a common chatbot window. Now, this common chatbot window can be through Microsoft Teams or through Facebook Messenger or through WhatsApp. So it can be through any channel. Even it can be accessed through Google Assistant or Siri or through Alexa. So why this helps, why this is important. So we have implemented these kind of solutions in like ministries in public sector organizations here in Middle East as well as other parts of the world. And we have found out that they have utilized a lot of creative way to enable the digital assistant and expose that to their customers as well as to the internal employees. So as you can see from a common chatbot window, I can raise leave requests, I can approve expenses, I can approve purchase orders or invoices. Similarly, I can track all my sales opportunities. So I can do a lot of different activities from the common chatbot window, as I mentioned. What other things we can do? For example, candidate experience, right, from the HR perspective. So we have implemented in one of our organizations that we want people to candidates to log on to their website in a traditional way. If I have openings in my organization, then the candidates will have to browse through all the JDs and figure out what JD matches their skill set and then apply for that. But using a chatbot, we can automate that entire piece. So the candidate comes on board. The candidate looks at the chatbot and starts typing the skills that the candidate has. So the candidate says that, okay, I have a graduation certificate in a particular field. Similarly, the work experience, the kind of domain expertise that the candidate has. So once the chatbot takes in all the input from the candidate, the chatbot evaluates and then automatically filters out only those openings which are applicable to that candidate. So that's a smart way of managing the candidates. Similarly, you talk about external customers, whether it is in the telecom vertical or whether it is in the healthcare side for the patient engagement. So chatbots have really proved of great value to different organizations. And um, again, as I said, the chatbot can be exposed to the external customers or even to the internal employees. So we have seen that employees spend a lot of time in creating the transactions in all these different enterprise applications. So using a chatbot, they can quickly create all the transactions, get all the information that they need from the chatbot, which is ideally interacting with all the backend applications, and they can get much more time to work on the value adding activities. They can have more time to do a lot of creative stuff within the organization. So that's how we help the employees within the organization to do more with less time, effort, as well as resources. So that's more from the digital assistant or virtual assistant capabilities. I can also show you very quickly what are different use cases that we've got as a part of our repository. So, all the employees can get the entire HR self-service at their fingertips. Similarly, recruitment assistance is the example that I just quoted in the last slide. Finance self-service, supply chain, vendors, payment status, or from the customer's perspective, even from the enterprise performance management side. So if I want to check my budget as a department owner, or if I want to plan for the forecasts, I can do all that from the chatbot. Similarly, management reporting. So we've seen people invest a lot of time in creating the reports, and they have very less time in analyzing those reports. So using a digital assistant, we can turn the entire game around. People can look at the reports very quickly from the chatbot. So, I can, if I have an iPhone, I can just pick up the iPhone and say, "Hey Siri, can you please show me the last month's variance analysis report?" And it'll interact with the backend applications and get me the variance analysis report on my screen there and there. So that gives me all the report, all the information, whether it is financial, operational, or qualitative information at my fingertips. So the entire management or statutory reporting can be automated through a chatbot. Similarly, IT help desk and HR help desk and troubleshooting. So whether it is about resetting a password, whether it is about getting access to a certain remote working software, so all these types of FAQs and transactions can be managed by a chatbot. So most of the organizations where we have implemented this, we found out that because of the COVID scenario, very less people were going to the office, and we wanted to make sure that there is no disruption in the business in the day-to-day activities. So that's how we created these chatbots and we implemented to for our customers, so that their day-to-day activities are not hampered, and most of the activities are taken care by automation, whether it is the digital assistant or RPA. Once you have these processes automated, your staff can actually focus on the value adding activities and not creating these transactions or collating the management report and stuff. So that's how we try to change or give them a better way of working in the organizations. The other set of examples are vertical specific chatbots. So whether it is patient appointment booking or call center automation or customer service, even on in the call center. So the workload might remain the same because now people are not using any of the in-person services. The volumes have gone down. So how do we automate, or how do we make sure that our call center or support center is efficient enough to cater to the increasing call volumes? So we deploy a chatbot as a primary point of contact for any queries or any questions or feedbacks or complaints. So once the customer interacts with the chatbot, they get what they need in terms of the information, and also they can create the service request from the chatbot. If in at any point of time, if the chatbot is not able to cater to the requirements, it can do a live handover to an agent, which is a person. So it can do that live handover, and all the activities can be taken care by the live agent then on. But most of the simple queries or creating SRs or getting a feedback or a complaint from the customer can be managed by a chatbot directly. Similarly, on the higher education side, if you see, we have the students university interaction. So students getting to know what kind of courses or what kind of um, prerequisites are for each of the courses. So I can do all that here. So similarly, banking and insurance kind of bots. So there are a lot of different ideas how we can automate the processes for the customers as well as for the employees. And then there are public sector related chatbots, which are from economic development perspective, parking and other services, complaints or feedbacks, public health, and then you know uh, it's an ocean. So as many ideas you get, you can start automating these. So we have live references, and we have good feedbacks from our customers where we have implemented these kind of chatbots for automating all the processes. Switching on to the next part, which is on the RPA side. So RPA is again used for automating a lot of business processes. It helps us to get rid of all the manual activities that are there in the organization and gives us free time so that we can do value adding activities. So what is RPA and what it can do, right? So that's always a question. What processes can we automate? What processes we should not automate? Because automating every process might not get you the return on investment that you're looking for. So when you look at RPA, so RPA is basically an automation program that can work on multiple platforms. It can interact with multiple applications or softwares and automate the processes for the organization. What it can do, it can basically extract all the information from the email automatically, extract the attachments, and it can um, use those attachments to do a lot of activities within the applications in the infrastructure that you've got, whether they're on premise or cloud. That ideally doesn't matter to RPA. Similarly, logging into the different applications, whether they are on premise or cloud, creating transactions in those, validating those, and also approving those. So you can configure certain rules based on which the RPA can work and automate your processes end to end. Similarly, moving files and folders from one place to the other. Let's say if you want to create a management reporting pack on a monthly basis, I can deploy an RPA that triggers automatically as soon as your books are closed. Um, and there is no human intervention required. So it collates all the information that is required from different places. It puts it on a presentation or a Word document, creates that entire pack and emails it to all different stakeholders within the organization. So it can also do a lot of form filling, which generally people spend so much time on, and it can save you that much time for filling the forms or entering all your information into your enterprise applications. Similarly, reading and writing from and to the databases. It can also help you to extract data from the web. For example, I want to source candidates. How can I source accurate candidates which have the same skills as I'm asking for. So one way, in a traditional way, we have HR executives who go on LinkedIn, they go on Indeed.com and all other websites, and they start looking for candidates or profiles that match the requirement. The other way around is to make sure that we can automate that entire activity using an RPA bot, and all other which require human intervention, like scheduling interviews and all the processes, so on, can be managed by the HR executive. So they save a lot of time in sourcing the profiles or in identifying the right candidates that match the job description. Similarly, connecting to different APIs at the back end and doing certain activities, um, making certain calculations, or even extracting data from the documents. So whether they are PDF documents and or Word documents, and I want to extract data from those documents and then do certain activities. Similarly, collecting social media statistics, like doing sentiment analysis, or trying to identify how many people reacted on your posts in terms of the corporate posts that you have made, and what is the kind of feedback that you're getting, what are the comments, are they positive, negative. So you can do a lot of social media analytics as well. And lastly, rules. So as I mentioned, you can have simple to complex rules embedded within RPA, so that it can use these different rules to take decisions and ensure that the process can be completed end to end. What RPA cannot do, so RPA is not um, does not have the intelligence of its own. So when I say intelligence, it does not have its own IQ, right? So any task wherein you have to make decisions on feel good basis, or you have to make decision based on your experience, so those kind of tasks cannot be or should not be automated through RPA, because it might not give you the accurate results that you're expecting from an RPA. So wherever there is human intelligence required for decision making, you should not implement RPA. But on the other hand, wherever you have a predefined rule set, or you have predefined protocols based on which you can have the decision making done, then RPA is the best candidate to look at. So that covers the basics of what RPA can do. And let me go into the next few details. So I've covered the hire to retire process. Similarly, I've covered the procure to pay and order to cash. So I've covered all these different detailed processes, and we have tried to list down what are the potentials in terms of automating most of these processes, and what processes should not be automated. So all that you can see here in red are the processes which you should not automate, because you will not get the accurate result, or you might not get the return on investment that you're expecting from there. So as you can see, the one that I spoke about, sourcing candidates, you can define rules, you can define the job description, and based on that, RPA can extract right candidates from different job portals for you, and it can give you those kind of candidates. So if you go further, screening candidates has a medium automation potential. So depends, as I mentioned, if you have to do that on your judgment, then RPA is not the right tool. But if you have certain rules or protocols defined for doing that process or executing it, then yes, RPA is the best one. Similarly, selecting candidates is more like a manual activity. So it requires your experience, it requires intelligence. So that's how we don't do that. We can do the entire pre-employment verification. We can create and manage reports at any point in time. Similarly, if you look at employee onboarding, so when the employee joins the organization, during that time, we need to create the email ID. We need to give certain access to different systems to that employee. Similarly, we need to give them, certain policy documents. We need to enter the details of that employee into different systems like IT systems or HR and payroll and ERP systems. So if you have those kind of onboarding requirements, then RPA is the best candidate, I would say. In such a case, RPA can do all these onboarding activities for all the employees, and it can save you a lot of time because ultimately, if you don't have an RPA, people need to get engaged and they need to do all these onboarding activities by themselves. So we have implemented these kind of processes for organizations who have a lot of new hires on a month-to-month basis, or if they have blue collar employees. So the attrition rate would be very high. So in such case, employee onboarding as well as employees offboarding processes consume a lot of time and effort for the central HR teams. Similarly, managing the time and attendance, managing the compliances, managing employee performance, rostering, managing compensation or the benefits. So all these, similarly, managing the HR help desk. So I might have a chatbot which is working as the front end for the employee. So on the chatbot, I can say, I am planning to apply for a loan. Can you please give me uh, a document that states my employment with the organization? So this information is collected by the chatbot and it goes to RPA. RPA can understand what kind of request it is, pull out information from different systems for that employee, create a document and send it back to the employee as requested. So entire process of document can be automated. It's not only this loan related documents, it can be any documents, right? So all the documents that come from HR, you can automate that using the chatbot plus RPA kind of a solution. On the other side, from the finance perspective or procure to pay processes, so here also there are a lot of processes that you can automate to save time and effort, because it's not just saving time and effort, right? It's also about the employee's job satisfaction. People who are doing these mundane activities, they are doing these manual data entry kind of activities. If we take away these processes from them and give them more challenging tasks, they would be very happy to execute them, and they will add a lot more value rather than just creating entries or filling up certain forms and processes in the organization. So creating POs, creating or submitting the requisitions, similarly submitting the purchase order to the vendors, processing the receipts, managing the invoice collection and entry, managing the electronic invoicing, whether you get the invoices on emails or you get physical documents and you have PDF kind of documents coming in from different vendors. How do we make sure that these invoices are accurately entered in the system? So all that can be easily managed by the RPA as an engine. Similarly, running the payment processes, once the validations are done, once the milestones are reached, or you have, the payments to be processed, generating reports and distributing them. So these are all different types of processes that you can automate. From order to cash perspective, again, there are a lot of different processes, as you can see. So what I'm trying to show here is the potential of RPA to automate these type of processes. So every organization has all these different processes, but they don't realize the amount of time that they can save if they automate most of these processes in the organization. Similarly, record to reports, as I mentioned, if we want to create a management reporting at the end of every month, so we can help the organization to close their books faster, and also make sure that we generate the management reporting pack and it is distributed out on a routine basis to the right stakeholders. One of the processes that I want to take you in detail is invoice automation. So let's say you have tens and hundreds of invoices coming to your accounts payable department on a routine basis. So how we can automate RPA and using RPA. So if you are getting your invoices through emails, then RPA bot, which does not require any human intervention, it can continuously monitor your emails, and as soon as it gets the invoices, it can extract those invoices from the emails and put it in a shared folder. Once it extracts that information and puts it in a shared folder, then the RPA extracts that information, and then it starts reading the invoice. So when it starts reading the invoice, it starts identifying what is the PO number attached to that invoice. What are who is the vendor, what are the policies that we had agreed with that vendor, whether we have reached that milestone for the payment or not. If there are any missing documents, then it can also send some information back to the vendor through the email that these are the missing documents, maybe the trade license expired or something. So you can do all these communications using an RPA. So there is no human intervention required. Similarly, if you see, pre-processing the document, classification of the keywords based on how the invoice looks like, what are the uh, invoice amounts that you've got in the invoice, whether they match with your data in your ERP or not. So it extracts all this information from the invoice, and then it starts interacting with the ERP. So as you can see, compare and validate the information across the documents, and then it also sends exceptions. So if there is an exception in terms of, let's say, there is no PO, right, and we have not defined any rules, if there is no PO, then what to do? So if that's the case, then that's like an exception. Or if the invoice amount is mismatching totally, so that's an exception. We cannot process that invoice without a human intervention or without an external approval. So in such cases, these are called exceptions. So it creates those exceptions, and those exceptions can be sent on email to the person who manages all the invoices, and then the person can take over. But if it is a regular case, then it can automatically pick up that invoice. It can do all the validations that are required from an ERP application. It will match the PO number, it will match the payment milestone, it will also match the invoice amount and all other details that are present in the invoice, and as per our ERP invoice processing rules engine. So once it extracts all this information and validates, then it can enter all these details into the ERP system and send it for approval. So it can manage the entire invoice processing end to end using the RPA bot. And that's very powerful, right? Because if you are getting certain invoices on a routine basis, then we don't want people to waste time looking at those invoices and doing the data entry into the ERP application. That's more like a mundane task. It's not an interesting task. I mean, to be honest with you, it can, if it can be automated through a bot, why should I do the data entry by myself? I rather do some more value adding activity, right? So that's how we can automate the entire flow of the invoice processing. Let's say in certain case, we get physical invoices, right, which are submitted. So if I have those physical invoices, I can scan those physical invoices and put those scanned documents into a folder, and RPA will automatically pick that up from that folder. So, this is the way how we have implemented for our customers. Going forward, I'll not talk about what it uses in the backend, but I'll go to the next part very quickly. So bank reconciliation. So as I mentioned, so if I go back, this is the area. So, manage the report to close. So how do we do the reconciliations? So reconciliation, it can be any reconciliation. It can be bank reconciliation, or it can be subledger level of reconciliation, or it can be a third party reconciliation, like say maybe a credit card, or any other sources that you have in your organization. So let's say POS. So if you want to reconcile that on a routine basis, you can utilize the bot to do that. So, you know, it helps organizations to close their books faster by reconciling all the statements that they have with their ERP systems. Once the reconciliation is done, you can quickly close your books and do the reporting. So RPA can be of immense use in the entire reconciliation and close process. So you can see, as we know that, now that we have seen one example, the RPA bot can read the emails, extract the bank statements. It can be in a PDF or a Word or an Excel format, which is the MT940 format. Even if it is not in an MT940 format, because a lot of banks now charge for giving the MT940 format. So we can extract that information in a raw format, the way the bank is giving it to us, without having to pay anything extra to the bank. We can extract that document and save it in a particular folder, and we can start the bot can start reading the information from the the statement that is provided by the bank. It starts reading all the information, and it then starts creating or classifying all the transactions into reconciled and unreconciled kind of transactions. So you can see it creates an output file which has all the reconciled transactions, and once they are reconciled, it logs on to the ERP and marks them as reconciled transactions. Similarly, if they are not reconciled, then it will create those like exceptions or unreconciled transactions, and then it will move forward. So the interesting part is, let's say if we get certain unreconciled transactions, and we tell the RPA bot how to resolve these unreconciled kind of items. So it has a machine learning capability, or cognitive intelligence, wherein it gets trained itself on a over a period of time. So as in when we tell the bot how to reconcile these items, it understands and learns it, and in the next few months you will see the number of unreconciled items will automatically reduce substantially. Similarly, if there are certain exceptions or transactions which are not found in your ERP, then it also creates those as exceptions, and then it sends the final report to the admin or to the person who is managing it. So that way it can do the entire reconciliation, whether it is bank reconciliation or subledger, or even uh, three-way or four-way reconciliation. So if we have these kind of requirements of reconciling items, then RPA bot is a classic candidate, I would say, and automate a lot of different processes for you to close your books faster. So I think I've almost hit the time. I would leave some time for Q&A. Before that, I want to just host a couple of poll questions. So I'll be happy if you can answer the poll questions. So I'll keep the poll question on for uh, like 5 or 10 seconds, and then you can let me know. So I'll close the poll now. So I see most of the people have mentioned that cost optimization is one of the important areas. The second is operational efficiency. So I think yes, it is very important to identify which are the areas where we can optimize the cost, where we can reduce our expenses, and that's where RPA comes into picture. So we are not saying that we want to replace the workforce. What we are trying to say is we want to replace the manual processes that are there in every corporate. So if I automate those, then our employees will have much more time to contribute to the organization. So our
So,
hiring
Arpan
rate
Anurag here.
might reduce. Yeah, Anurag, please.
Yeah. So Arpan Anurag here. So, one of the things what we've also seen in the market is around the kind of tool sets where the market is more advanced now. So, from a cost optimization perspective, there are process mining tools and offerings which are now available as part of the RPA, where we can go and find out the logs, we can go and see the processes, and actually the algorithm itself finds out where the most time is being spent on the process, and it also tries to find out what are the reasons why more time is being spent and how it can be optimized. So once we start doing the process optimization, normally we have seen a linkage or correlation between the process optimization and the cost optimization. So there are ways in which the industry has moved ahead, and algorithms are being available where we can do a process mining and we can find out the ways to optimize and use the RPA to support the same. Back to you, Arpan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I have one more poll of now that we know what RPA or what a chatbot can do, I would want to know your opinion in terms of whether you would be really interested to look at these kind of implementations in your organizations. Do you have a lot of these kind of manual processes in your organizations that can be automated for maybe cost optimization, or maybe for increasing the operational efficiency? So I'm just launching a quick poll. I'll close it in like 5-7 seconds. Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on to the Q&A. I have certain questions which are mentioned in the chat. So yeah, so what if the RPA encounters some technical issue or a technical failure, and how does one get to know if the process steps have been interrupted or not? So it has a great logging mechanism. So at any point in time, it can very clearly tell us if the processes have failed anywhere or did it stop anywhere. So it can email you or it can send you alerts on a routine basis saying that these are the items that could not go through because of technical issues, or the application couldn't open, the application may be down, or because of the network connectivity issue. So it will tell you all the processes or all the steps that it has passed and where it failed with a screenshot. So using screenshots or using right mechanism of communication, the person who is managing these bots can quickly know what went wrong and where do we need to start from when we resume. So there is another question about which RPA tools we use. So we are partners with UiPath as well as with Automation Anywhere. So both these tools are we have capabilities, and we implement these both these kind of solutions across you know different implementations that we have done, because these are the two most used, or I would say the best players in the market. So that's why we implement Automation Anywhere as well as UiPath. So there is another question, which is on the kind of applications it can work with. So yeah, so it can work with SAP or with Oracle, or even your homegrown system. So if you have any in-house systems that you have grown from .NET or from Java, so we can the chat RPAs can work on any of these applications. And as I mentioned, it can be hosted on cloud or it can be hosted on premise, so that it does not matter to the RPA. Till the time we give the right access to the RPA bot, it can do all the interactions with different types of applications within the organization. Any other questions anyone has got? So there's one more question about the RPA. So how can organizations start their journey on RPA, right? So that's a pretty interesting one. Um, as Evosys and Mastek, what we do is we also do discovery sessions wherein we try to identify what are the processes that the corporate should automate and what are the processes that they should not look at. So we do that study for enterprises, and we give them a report saying that these are the P1 processes. If you automate these P1 processes, you will save so much time, effort, and money on when you shift away from the manual processes. So we do that kind of discovery sessions, and people from our team who understand these different domains, whether they are finance, HR, or supply chain, or even very specific to the vertical. So we deploy business analysts and we deploy RP experts so that we can do that discovery session. So that will give you a clear indication as to how your automation roadmap should look like, and whether you should automate all the processes or automate some processes to start with. So that's how we help organizations to start their journey on automation. So we are almost done with our time. So if any other questions, I'll be happy to take them. Great. So on the closing note, we can also offer a quick POC for any process just to see how the the RPA would work in your environment. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us. You can let us know if you want to see any POC working in your environment. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.